The People of Iran, A Narrative of Endurance by Shabgard. Imagine living in a land where history is not defined by calm, but by standing one's ground. Iran is not merely a country, it is a living memory, a memory of defiance, of uprising, and of a struggle that has never ceased. Contrary to narratives that have sought to portray Iranians as indifferent or submissive, the reality is otherwise. If one turns the pages of history, one encounters a nation that has stood against power time and again. From resistance to the Arab conquest in the 7th century, to local uprisings against the Mongols in the 13th, to defiance against Afghan rule in the 18th, and then the constitutional revolution of 1906, challenging Qajar autocracy and foreign influence. Even in the 20th century, this spirit endured in the face of the Allied occupation in 1941. These are not merely historical events. They are indicators, evidence that resistance is embedded within the Iranian identity. Yet to understand the present, one must move closer in time. In the final years of the Pahlavi era, with rising oil prices, Iran became a central actor in the global energy market. Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi stood firm against Western pressure to sell oil at artificially low prices. He maintained that while the West sold its industrial goods at high value, it demanded Iranian oil at a discount. During these same years, opposition to the Pahlavi state formed into two principal currents, both operating largely outside Iran and both contributing to the escalation of unrest. The first consisted of students and intellectuals who had been sent abroad, particularly to the United Kingdom, France, and the United States, on government scholarships. Many of them, initially pursuing education, came under the influence of Marxist and anti-imperialist ideologies. Within universities and expatriate circles, they campaigned against the Shah, portrayed the Pahlavi system as a client dictatorship of imperialism, and through demonstrations, publications, and media campaigns mobilized Western public opinion against him. These activities significantly contributed to the international delegitimization of the Pahlavi government. The second current comprised groups that turned towards Arab countries, particularly Palestine and Lebanon, to receive guerrilla training. These individuals, including elements of Marxist organizations and certain Islamist groups, trained in camps affiliated with the Palestine Liberation Organization and other Palestinian factions in Lebanon. Hadi Ghaffari, a prominent figure within this movement, has publicly confirmed in interviews that from 1975 onwards, he traveled to Lebanon and border regions of Palestine, received guerrilla training, and participated in networks involved in smuggling weapons into Iran. He described in detail the procurement of vehicles in Syria, their loading with arms, and their transfer into Iran through Western borders. These networks facilitated the entry of weapons into the country and were implicated in certain armed operations. Though ideologically distinct, these two currents both contributed to an atmosphere of instability and violence. Armed groups occasionally carried out attacks in which civilians were the victims, while attributing responsibility to state security forces in order to intensify public anger. One of the most tragic examples was the arson attack on the Cinema Rex in Abadan on August 19, 1978. In this act of terror, the cinema doors were sealed and the building set alight. Between 580 and 600 people, primarily families and ordinary citizens, perished in the flames. Opposition groups immediately attributed the crime to the state security apparatus and the Shah's regime, presenting it as a symbol of dictatorial brutality. Following the revolution, the principal accused, Hossein Takbalizadeh, confessed in revolutionary courts that the act had been carried out in support of the revolutionary movement and under the influence of extremist Islamist elements. This event became a turning point in intensifying protests and was widely utilized in media narratives against the Shah. At the same time, the media landscape was shifting. Outlets such as BBC Persian played a role in shaping public perception, broadcasting the speeches of Ruhollah Khomeini extensively. Within this context, Khomeini was transferred from Iraq to France. Under the presidency of Valéry Giscard d'Estaing, he was permitted to settle in Neauphle-le-Château, from where he coordinated media operations and maintained extensive contact with opposition networks inside Iran. Subsequently, the United States facilitated the neutrality of the Iranian military. According to declassified documents from the U.S. State Department and National Security Council, Jimmy Carter dispatched Robert Heiser to Tehran in January 1979 to persuade the Shah's military commanders not to stage a coup, not to resist Khomeini's return, and to remain neutral. A decisive Western consensus emerged. At the Guadeloupe Conference, 4–7 January 1979, four Western leaders, Jimmy Carter, United States, James Callaghan, Valéry Giscard d'Estaing, France, and Helmut Schmidt, reached agreement that the Shah must leave as soon as possible. The United Kingdom, in addition to broadcasting via BBC Persian, maintained contacts with opposition figures. France hosted Khomeini. The United States signaled privately that the military would not obstruct his return. Under these coordinated pressures, the Shah left the country. Soon after, Khomeini returned to Iran aboard a flight filled with international journalists. The 1979 revolution unfolded. The previous order collapsed. Yet the new structure revealed its nature with remarkable speed. Within days of February 11, 1979, there was no transitional pause. Executions began, without due process, without meaningful judicial procedure. The Rafah School in Tehran became a center for detention, interrogation, and the issuance of death sentences. In the earliest days, dozens were executed. At the apex, Ruhollah Khomeini. On the ground, Sadegh Khalkhali, often referred to as the hanging judge. Between 1979 and 1981, more than 5,000 political executions were recorded, based on opposition estimates and historical documentation. Tens of thousands were detained. Millions were removed from the fabric of society, from the military, from universities, from hospitals, from public administration, from industry. The purge was extensive and systematic. The Cultural Revolution began. Universities were closed. Thousands of professors and students were expelled. Doctors, engineers, administrators dismissed in succession. The consequence, one of the largest waves of elite immigration in modern Iranian history. The 1980s, the bloodiest decade in recent memory. Between 10,000 and 20,000 political executions from 1979 to 1988. At the apex, Ruhollah Khomeini. President Ali Khamenei, then President. Prime Minister Mir Hossein Mousavi. Then, 1988, the mass execution of political prisoners. A committee was formed, later known as the Death Committee. Hossein Ali Nayeri, Morteza Eshraghi, Ibrahim Raisi, Mustafa Pourmohammadi. Thousands of prisoners were executed in silence. 1999, Tehran University dormitories. Student protests met with violent raids. At least 7 killed. Some reports suggest up to 17. More than 1,500 arrested. Hundreds injured. Hundreds expelled. At the apex, Ali Khamenei. President Mohammad Khatami. 2009, the Green Movement. At least 112 killed. Some estimates exceed 150. Thousands arrested. Hundreds imprisoned long-term. At the apex, Ali Khamenei. President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. 2017, nationwide protests. Approximately 70 killed. Thousands detained. November 2019, one of the deadliest crackdowns. Approximately 1,500 killed, over 7,000 arrested. At the apex, Ali Khamenei, President Hassan Rouhani. 2022, the Woman, Life, freedom movement. More than 500 killed, some reports up to 632. At least 74 children, thousands detained, hundreds imprisoned. At the apex, Ali Khamenei, President Ibrahim Raisi. Yet the culmination, January 2026, a nationwide mobilization announced by Reza Pahlavi with participation reported across more than 400 cities, tens of millions present. The response? Military-grade force, live ammunition, direct fire, targeting of heads. Reported figures are severe, tens of thousands killed in some estimates. Other sources suggest 35,000 to 45,000 within 2 days alone. Many of the wounded were removed from hospitals and executed. Thousands more were treated in secrecy. This was not merely suppression. It constituted a systematic mass killing, an event that may be considered among the most extreme instances of violence recorded in modern history. And yet, one element remains unchanged. The pattern persists: repression, detention, erasure, exile, and repetition. The cost? Tens of thousands killed directly, millions excluded from social and economic life, a vast exodus of talent, and countless wounds never formally recorded. But this is not solely the story of a state. It is the story of a people. A people who, under some of the most unequal conditions in modern history, continue to stand. And that endurance, despite all costs, continues.